Welcome everyone to another groundbreaking episode of Virtual Global Leadership Podcast, the place where we peel back the layers of innovation, creativity, and the forces shaping up the future of how we work and live. Today, we are beyond excited to have with us a guest whose story is not just inspiring but truly transformative. Meet Maria, the visionary head of people operations at Slash and the co founder of Pratisara Bhumi Foundation. Maria's journey is nothing short of remarkable, blending her sharp acumen in tech with a profound commitment to environmental sustainability and community empowerment. At Slash, Maria is at the forefront of redefining what it means to work in the digital age. She builds and leads remote autonomous teams that aren't just about developing software products and startups. They're about pioneering new ways of collaboration and innovation, breaking barriers and building bridges across continents and cultures. But Maria's passion doesn't stop at the digital frontier. With the Pratisara Bhumi Foundation, she channels her design thinking and leadership skills into environmental and social sustainability, proving that technology and green initiatives can not only coexist but flourish together. Maria is also a fervent advocate of the co working movement and the future of work, envisioning spaces and communities that foster creativity, collaboration, and a new kind of professional freedom. Whether it's through cutting edge projects at Slash or spearheading initiatives at her foundation, Maria embodies the spirit of a leader who not only dreams of a better world but takes bold steps to make it a reality. So get ready to deep dive into a conversation about leadership, innovation, remote work, sustainability, and the power of community. Welcome, Maria. How are you?
Hey, Sagar, thanks for the amazing introduction. I'm good. I feel like I'm blushing just to hear that introduction. So, thanks
Yeah.
so much.
And sometimes I discuss this with guests on the podcast as well. It's important to sometimes reflect on the work we are doing. Sometimes I notice that we are really, of course, it's a wonderful thing to express gratitude to people who have helped us, but also sometimes I wonder it's also important to feel good about all the work we are doing, isn't it, Maria?
Yeah. I just had a very interesting conversation with my mentor, plus also the CEO of Slash this morning about that, how to really um, embrace and admit and own it, own your achievements, which is sometimes not that easy for certain personalities. So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
you know Sometimes I really felt for a long period of time that I am so busy in let's say the kind of even functions that I have played, which I'm sure we'll be diving deep as we go deep
Yeah.
in the conversation. Sometimes I wonder, when was the last time I acknowledged, when was the last time I really wrote down all the wonderful things that I have done. Of course, I have also had my own share of challenges and failures, but then life is about working with strengths and reflecting on the good things that has been done, and maximizing it and going ahead. So yeah.
Hmm.
So Maria, what
Yeah.
does how have things shifted, let's say in the professional context, in the world of startups, or in the world where you know where post pandemic things have really shifted. So where do you see the future of work and the future of startups going?
Wow, such a difficult question to answer, but a great one. Um, I think it comes down to um, how human being could adapt fastly with the lots of uncertainties, right? Um, I think I started to get to know remote work back then in 2015, 2016, where at least in Indonesia where I live, no one actually really understand like, what do you mean you don't have an office to go to? Like, it was a still unique concept to a lot of people in Indonesia. At that time, we knew that I personally knew that remote work is the only strategy for people to move on and to be more creative, to have more flexible time, to be more productive, and really harvest all the goodness out of this way of work and also way of life, right? But after the pandemic, things shifted really, really fast. People are forced to adjust and really adapt with that, current situation. What I feel like for remote work itself, there's an opinion and there's kind of um, strategies where people are also really, really tired of working remotely with, the amount of isolations. If it's not done properly, the longingness for engagement with other human being and etc. So we were also discussing about, would hybrid work would hybrid be the answer, right?
Hmm.
To be this,
Yeah.
the future of
Yeah.
work. There's a lot of discussion about that recently because of the pandemic forced people to stay at home and work remotely without
Yeah.
any strategy or plan. A lot of companies failed to do remote work because they didn't have any other option but to do it in a crisis mode.
Yeah.
And and then now people started to like, maybe hybrid is, the option, the future of work, maybe going towards that direction. um, yeah, that's my point of view. In terms of startup, right, it's a different scenario. We've seen numbers of startups as well laid off a lot of people. We've seen venture capitals freeze their capitals as well. So it's not an easy year, if I can completely be honest. And this year is going to be also a challenge. But if it's done properly, and kind of re-understanding, reimagining what does growth mean in a
Mm-hmm.
startup world.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has still a lot of potentials, and as a human being, trying to solve a lot of problems digitally or from a technology side of things. I think it still has great opportunity, but again, we need to reimagine what does growth mean,
Yeah.
rather than burn money, right?
Yeah, yeah, so true, so true. I think, that reminds also me of the fact that even in India, what we are experiencing is, let's say, it's very common term that is called as funding winter, and
Yes. Mm.
and what I have also realized is that um, I think we are moving ahead those days where where the funding happened only with respect to valuations or the initial customer acquisition. So I think you are
Mm.
absolutely bang on. It's a very important phase where, or stage where growth in actual, let's say, an actual sense where there is a major client retention, or there is a consistency in the cash flow. I think, so this is where I also see that particular thing coming up in India as well. So thank you, Maria, for highlighting that.
Yeah.
uh, how different, I know that at the moment you're heading the people operations at Slash. Now, how that role, according to you, is different while managing it or building on it remotely versus traditionally in an office setup. So what's your thought there?
Mm. Well, I joined Slash not so long ago, right? I think two and a
Yeah,
half years ago, maybe. In my book, it's not so long ago.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
it's a different case with Gen X who moved from 1 year. For some people, 1 year is a long time, but for me, 2.5 years ago, I just started, right? And
Yeah,
when I started join Slash, Slash has already announced a remote first company,
yeah,
so the infrastructure was already there. So I was really lucky for that. I think our biggest challenge as a company was that engagement. and keep people feel that they belong and motivated. Also, one of the biggest reason, one of the biggest challenge at that time was, in order for people to engage, you need to understand what they need, right? What
Hmm.
they are motivated with. Since Slash, what it's similar to most of venture builder studios out there. We work a lot with software engineers. 80%, I think, more or less, of our team members are engineers. Surprisingly, majority of engineers are introverted, so we really need to kind of build strategy on making sure that people are comfortable and not feeling forced to engage to each other. So it's a very unique case for Slash, and maybe similar for other tech companies or digital products builders studios out there. But that was the first challenge that we talked about, on how to make sure that people are appreciated, how to make sure that people are, um, you know, um, still motivated, have the self autonomy, and engage and have that sense of belonging together. For us, it's less about remote setup because we've already been remote for quite some time for Slash. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I hope
yeah.
I answered your question.
Of course, Maria.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so
Good.
in your 2.5 years journey, what has been one of the most, let's say, a challenging instance or a challenging area where you in a way created and designed a solution for that? I mean, it would be great to hear that experience.
Yeah, I think for us as a company, at Slash, for me personally, is to, when I came in, when I joined the team, uh, that current team that I worked with has already had a certain bonding,
Hmm.
because the company has been built for quite some time, and the leadership in the company have done such an amazing work to make sure that people feel included, and majority of the team are Indonesian and Cambodian, right? So we are very warm. I think majority, we have a very warm personalities. We have that sense of kindness, and so the leadership have done a very great job in making this tied together. My challenge at that time, because Slash was in the middle of a growth, particular growth in terms of numbers of team members, is to make sure the new joiners, the newcomers, are aligned with that goals, with that uh, togetherness, with that collaborative kind of value and mindset. Um, I think that was the biggest challenge, and to do it fastly, in a fast manner, making sure that they are all ready to be productive and deliver, and at the same time have the understanding of our culture, was a huge amount of work, right? Something that Slash was investing a lot in terms of making sure that they are all on board with what we're looking at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And any successful initiative that you're proud of. Okay, this is something that happened through your intervention. Feel free to share that.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I think uh, we spent quite amount of time in identifying how to appreciate people, how to identify um, people's ambition, and things that people would like to achieve in their career path, and try to kind of integrate it into the right approach slash way of appraisal system, as simple as an appraisal
Yeah,
system, and
yeah.
really moving away from um, corporation approach of
Hmm.
appraisal system, right? We came up with in a nutshell, basically appreciate people of how much pain that they go through in order for them to be where they are right now. Someone who is in a junior level to work with lots of senior stakeholders, for example, had to go through a lot of pains for this person to be in a, at least in the same level of this community or team. It's not the same with senior people who are expected to be, yeah, it's your role to be in that level of
Mm.
expertise and level of knowledge.
Yeah.
The amount of appreciation in terms of appraisal metric is based on this personal growth,
Mm.
individual growth, basically. So it's very personal base in terms of each one person would be different, but the metric would be basically how much pain that you're willing to carry and you have to go through in order for you to achieve what you achieve.
Mm.
Something like that. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. So, Mara, it would be great to let the audience know on what are some of the areas where Slash is contributing. I think it would be wonderful if you can share that, like some of the offerings and some of the value that Slash brings to the
Okay.
world. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. Um, we basically provide an end-to-end services for venture building, starting from um, building a digital prototyping, ideation with the team, up to growing the team, up to senior headhunting and etc. Right. But this year, I think we really tried to focus on also helping our clients for product fit, product market fit strategies, but all of the aspect of venture building we try to kind of provide end to end, just because
Wow.
that we also built our own startup previously, so we had a full cycle of experience to help our client, because we experience it first, right, before we actually offer it to our client. Of course, along that end-to-end services, we offer staff augmentation, senior headhunting, um, market analysis, yeah, but mostly agile development, where we build web development and app development as well. So yeah.
Interesting, interesting. So,
Mm.
Maria, how do you leverage design thinking at your
Mhm.
initiative and Slash and the Pratisara Foundation that you work with? It would be wonderful to know that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm a very big fan of design thinking, so don't let me talk for the next 1 hour for this topic
Please
alone.
go ahead.
Feel free to
Please go
stop.
ahead. And how did this
But
happen? How did your love for design thinking happen? Like, what was that moment?
yeah, well, it was a long time ago, right? It was, I think, back in 2017. I used to uh, lead a co-working space called Ubud in
Mm-hmm.
Ubud, Bali. Through that co-working space, we had a lot of startups program, lots of hackathons. So in order for the team to understand how to run it properly, um, I was lucky enough to be involved in one of the biggest initiative in Indonesia for a digital startup. So I was trained to be design sprint facilitator at that time. And the trainer was actually trained by Google. So I was really lucky to be one of the selected people in Bali for that one. I fell in love with the idea of how iteration, how adaptability, how always checking your assumptions are applicable in any kind of industry and any kind of roles, not only startup building, not only business building or product, be it physical or digital development. So I was really amazed of this approach. Like at that time, not a lot of people are familiar with design thinking. So I was a bit like, why can't this be the thing?
Yeah.
But it was really cool to experiment with that approach for that national program where Indonesia built. Indonesia tried to launch 1,000 digital startup, right, as a national initiative.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to be able to apply it. In terms of, I'll start with the NGO first. So before answering your question, just as a context, right? The NGO Pratisara Bumi Foundation is established back then in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. The mission for that NGO is really to bridge the gap of economic development in Indonesia. As you may know,
Yeah.
Indonesia is really, really big, just like how
Yeah.
India is. There's a huge gap, right, between the central or the west part of Indonesia compared to the eastern part of Indonesia, and especially with the youth who are an untapped potential of the country, who are the next generation of this country. So we came up with a business incubation program that highlights how might we build business, but we also contribute to environment and social impact at the same time. And then the organization was growing. The program was also getting a lot of attention, and we're bringing so much impact. But to answer your question, where does design thinking falls into this? Um, we educate and train young people in east part of Indonesia and rural areas, basically the untapped regions and locations in Indonesia, to have the mindset, right? Meaning not only for them to build their own business, but also for them as a leader, for them to be resilient, for them to experiment, for them to check their assumptions and iterate. And this is such a great mindset for young leaders as well.
Yeah.
And considering this part of Indonesia are have a very challenging infrastructure at the same time. So being resilient is really one of the only way for them to move forward, right? So we
Yeah.
create the modules, we create the program based on design thinking approach,
Yeah.
um, and it's like a meta reflection for us to build these modules, because when we create the modules, we also use the design thinking approach, which is we want it to be contextual to each different region, because every region has their own context. Every communities have a different context in the way
Yeah.
they solve their problems, right?
Yeah.
So um, this is one thing. And and with Slash, it's more about um, making sure that we create the strategy of people operations, or HR for people who don't understand people operation. But for us to basically build the strategy based on what the employee needs. So it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
people centric. Um, in a startup scenario with design thinking, you really pay attention to the user, but in people operations scenario, we are trying to build a strategy or sort of product, let's say, based on what the employee needs.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
me, it's as simple as that. And for us to be able to create a prototype and experimenting with a smaller amount of team members and try to learn from it, and then iterate it. It's an amazing process, I would say, and yeah, gives a huge impact for the organization itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Maria, for sharing your, let's say, an entire the starting point to how your love for design thinking and the implementation is happening at both the initiatives that you're contributing. uh, Maria, what is the difference between someone who is leading the people operations versus the human resource, let's say, head, versus the L&D
Mm,
development head? So what
mm,
do you see as a differential? Because I see a lot of responsibilities interchange, right? So how do you
Yeah.
summarize that?
Mm, that's a good question. That was my first question when I started doing slash difference. It turned out HR is just a small amount of number, a small puzzle
Yeah,
of people
yeah,
operation. People operation
yeah,
is more holistic.
yeah.
It has more holistic approach in terms of it. It doesn't really talk about um, administrative part of it, the structure of it, but it's more about empathizing with the people. Learning and development is part of it, right? But how do we actually move from the traditional blocks of HR to be to meet more of what people needs? That's really what
Yeah.
I would um, define define it. So HR, I don't know, 6.0, I would say.
Wonderful, wonderful. So how do you see the role of people ops evolving with the increasing shift in the remote work? Like, where do you see that?
Hmm. Can you repeat your question, Sagar?
Sure, sure, sure. So how do you see the role of
How do I
people
see?
ops evolving with the increasing shift towards remote work?
Huh, yeah. I think it will evolve to be more the future of work chief
Mm-hmm.
at some point. I
Yeah,
saw more and more companies, bigger ones, um, has this specific person for them to just making sure that they're aligned with the future of works with, and essentially it's what the people, the next generation needs, right? Because they're the next workforce
yeah,
in globally. So I think it will evolve towards that direction where this role needs to uh, always make sure we provide a strategy where people is also heard and people is also uh, um, included in the process of strategizing. It all comes down to that. However, the lots of big corporation that has this title and started to create a strategy. Yeah, we have this future of work squad or team for us to be able to do that, but fail miserably to match the current policy in the company and the system with what actually the employee wants. It's such a sometimes it's such a contradictive effort as well. I've spoken to some of my dear friends who are also HR in a lot of corporations. There's this interesting conversation about when I start to head of research, what does this future of work personnel are actually doing. Most of the work that they're doing are evolve around minimizing risk, evolve around um, punishment based. If this happens, then this would happen. There's a lot of that, those conversation, which I think, yes, of course, when you have this big companies, you really also have, you need to pay attention in the security level and risk level. But the future of work, dedicated leaders or team or people or squad are not supposed to see this risk, right? They're supposed to kind of making sure that the people are included and making sure that they're aligned with available tools and technology to make things happen with regard to the young generation's lifestyle, I think.
yeah. So, what suggestions you have for folks who are aspiring to be leading the people ops? What are some of the soft and hard skills that are required? And rather, even if they have the skills, then what are some of the skills they must constantly try to make it better?
Well, adopt design thinking mindset is the first step, I would say.
Yeah, yeah,
I would like promote it hard, completely to people who would like to understand more about it. It's more about the mindset, like less about the process. Of course, there are process of empathizing and blah blah blah. But it's all about the mindset where you can apply it in anywhere you go. That's the first advice. I think the second one would be that advocate and um, learn more about facilitative leadership, because that's really
Mm.
something that is what makes you different as a person compared to an HR, the traditional HR manager. Um, and yeah, that would be the strength of if you're looking for people operation as your next career path.
Yeah. So, Maria, like I have an interesting question. I know it is interesting, and reason I'm asking this question
Okay.
is that, see, as a people ops leader, you will try to make things better. Maybe not only this organization, but for that matter, the goal is to make things better, right? And make things better for uh, and creating an enhanced experience of the team, plus helping them align their needs and the organization goals, right? But what are some of the uh, key points the other person, let's say the employees or the management, what are some of the areas and values they must develop to be able to leverage the value that as a leader you are trying to create?
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Mm, that's an interesting question. Value. Mm, I think openness is
Hmm.
key, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Why? Because we are talking about people,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
very unique, creature, and each of person has its, their own unique self. So it cannot be one fit for all, right? So
Yeah.
openness to receive different kind of approach and pivot when it needs to,
Yeah.
because sometimes a strategy might work. Okay, for example, right, in practical, we have this appraisal strategy and approach, and we're experimenting with it, and we didn't really like the result, for example. We get feedback from people, and they have some feedbacks, and for us to be able to shift from this approach to an iterated one requires an openness by the leadership and by the people themselves, because essentially they're the one who will implement it right throughout their career path with this certain organization. So yeah, understanding that um, it's okay to say, oh, this didn't work, let's
Yeah.
let's do something else, so openness to these kind of ideas and experimentations and always iterate is very valuable, and not many organizations are willing to go that far with this. But again, the title itself, people operations, so you kind of need to understand that you work with people who is a complex uh, um, creature, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course. Of course. So, Maria, how do you manage, let's say, challenges, failures, or for that matter, things that sometimes doesn't go the way they're supposed to go? So, what is your process of accepting it and then moving ahead from there?
hmm. I have a very interesting mental health journey with this whole
Sure,
accepting
sure, sure.
failure.
Yeah,
But in short, I think I learned, in order for me to keep my self healthy and still, because sometimes you got affected with, you're basically sometimes in a lot of difficult conversations with people. You need to listen, and sometimes you absorb a lot of energy from different personalities as well, positive or negative or somewhere in between. I think I learned that for me to be healthier, I always see from a perspective, what can I learn from this conversation? What can I learn from this failure? Um, Even if, for example, I have to talk with a very unique and complex personality, and to get that amount of feedback as well at the same time. That's always the angle that I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
What can I learn from this person? What can I learn from this situation? It gives me a sense of calmness, and to be able to see it from uh, the um, um, the outer part of the circle, and to reflect, right? um, yeah, I think that helped me a lot to find always the learning from a specific situation.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you, Maria, for sharing your way of help managing and working through it. For folks, sometimes they're confused between venture, let's say venture studio with incubation and acceleration. So, what are some of the key differentiation which you would like to highlight and share? How a venture studio is
Ah,
different from, yeah.
yeah, I think incubators or accelerators uh, let the team to work by themselves.
Hmm.
You, as an incubator and accelerators, your job is to create the support system around it. But
Hmm.
Venture Builder Studio is, we dedicate our team as well to help you build it, right?
Hmm.
In terms of strategy as a consultant, or even to build the product itself. So it's venture builder studios are more hands-on, of course, but incubator and accelerators are more, facilitating and giving you the ecosystem that you need, educating you on how to do things and how to execute things. Those are, I think, the difference.
Interesting. And what advice you have for women leaders who are looking for, of
Yeah.
course, leadership roles in tech and entrepreneurship? What advice you have for women leaders?
Oh wow. It's well, we're getting there, right? We're getting the balance. Still a long way to go, but I think maybe you asked this because there's still imbalance in kind of gender equality in tech industry, for sure. I think my advice is, don't be afraid um, to show up and do your homework, learn your numbers, and speak up still. I also look at it from an Indonesian perspective, right?
Sure, sure.
Kind of looking at the current situation here in Indonesia. Um, I think it's more on the company side as well, organizations, startups, or studios or agencies like us, to make sure that you also include sort of an equity um, initiatives for you to hire more women leaders in your company, because that's really what it's important, at least in Indonesia. There's lots of great women leaders, engineers, but sometimes um, they still need the equity. They still need the ladder for them to be able to catch up with the gap, because the gap is that big right now,
Yeah.
in terms of experience and knowledge and etc. So yeah, that's something that I would advise towards more to the organization instead of the leaders itself.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Maria, for sharing that. And as the people ops leader, how do you ensure that diversity and inclusion are not just buzzwords, but actually are in part of the
Yeah,
process and the teams that you build?
yeah. This is um, challenging,
Mm-hmm.
but the work still need to be started, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think practically we're trying to kind of identify, it's not only a slogan or a jargon for us, but
Yeah.
how does it look like in our day-to-day operations, as simple as um, etiquette on how you ask questions or how you say things. To me, because recruitment is one of the closest thing that I'm also involved in. Um, the people operations team slash we always kind of have these certain playbooks for us to check our biases for every interviewer, whether it's technical or culture based type of interviews and assessment. We do have this biases checks and make sure that we put a certain goals in our company OKR for us to achieve. For example, oh, this year we're going to need at least 25% women engineers in our delivery team, for example. And it is a company OKR, right? It's not something that we are just
Yeah.
advertising it and
Yeah.
promoting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it to us is really pragmatic. To us comes to down how does it look like in the day-to-day operations? What are the don'ts? What are the do's? We need to be pragmatic, otherwise it will be just another jargon on our office wall or in our LinkedIn
Yeah.
banner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So, how do you, stay updated and continuously learn, be it in the fields of tech, design thinking, and future of work? How do you do that?
Well, surprisingly, I just joined a course for the design thinking, advanced design thinking recently still, because I need that. I need the second certification just for my personal growth. There's this
Yeah.
organization that I really love called IDEO. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah.
it. They offer such a great courses and community and forums as well for you to keep updated. But also, I read a lot of newsletter from different uh, corporate rebels, if you want to
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just an example of like, yeah, we let's not do this, right? But also having kind of a principle that you would like to learn more. Like, for example, holacracy. I really want to learn more about holacracy. Then I'll kind of just dive in into and research into how that would apply to our current organization, for example. So yeah, it comes down to that. Also, your personal preference as a leader, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And what are some of the common misconceptions about remote work that you would like to dispel?
Remote work misconception. Well, there's a bunch of it, right? I mean, just to kind of half joking, but this is also true because my family recently commented like, it seems like you never work. It seems like you move around from one place to another, and like like how are you going to be productive with this kind of flexible, so much freedom, so much flexibility? Um, It's not true. First of all, we are very busy, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we're busy with our own terms, right? There's this like non-linear kind of approach of the work where we can always squeeze our personal time into it, but that those things are done in order for us to have a balance and integrate our life better. For sure, we learned from being in a pandemic for a couple of years, and there's a lot of research that says already, and I've proven myself that we are more productive this way if it's done properly, right? So
Yeah.
misconception of like, sure, super laid back kind of life, especially that now I'm living in Bali and people are like, you never work. I,
Yeah.
can you imagine 7 p.m. I'm still with my laptop because I know at 2 p.m. I took my kids to somewhere, right? So there's this commitment with longer
Yeah.
non-linear kind of work and life integration for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And what books, podcasts, or resources have significantly influenced your approach to people operations and leadership?
Oh wow, books. I think the first book that I read was by Adam Grant about leadership. I really love this guy, super inspirational and amazing. He speaks with to my language as well because I think we're at the same age, if I'm not mistaken. Um, you're part of running remote
Yeah,
community as well, and this is something that I find really valuable. I get lots of advices, although sometimes it's less Southeast Asian centric, but there are some advices that are very very useful, and I use it to till this day at Slash as well, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, and facilitative leadership comes really handy with at least what I'm doing right now. Um, I learned design thinking from Jake Knapp's book.
Yeah.
Um, it's also very, very useful. I still have that book in my uh, house right now. Yeah, I think those are what I can suggest on top of my head right now.
Interesting, interesting. Looking forward, what big dream or project you're most excited about pursuing in your career?
Oh wow! With Slash, we just launched new services, new website. So I really look forward to this um, new offerings, right? And I'm recently also added to the executive committee as executive committee member in Slash. So I'm learning, I'm absorbing a lot of information from my CEO and my CTO as well. It's quite a journey with them. But on the side, Pratisara Bhumi Foundation, we are also exploring, not exploring, we're creating this beautiful program to talk about traditional technology, which is super incredibly rich in Indonesia, but it's untouched and untapped. And we're thinking to kind of how do we make sure that it's preserved and
Hmm.
it's also financially sustainable for people who are inventing traditional, technology in Indonesia specifically. So yeah, I look forward to that uh, New Year kind of resolution. We're already in March, which is unbelievably fast, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's something that we're looking at right now.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you, Maria, for giving your valuable time, sharing your learnings, as in of course with not only from Slash, because I think I've known you for many years when the co-working was relatively new both in Indonesia and India. I think we connected then.
Yeah,
Thank you for giving and sharing your experiential learnings, because I think that is the true value has been created for the audiences. So before we end this conversation, do you have any closing comments for our viewers? And also, please do share what is the best way for them to connect with you.
yeah. I mean, remote work is, I think, the new way of work, but we need to keep evolving to make sure that as leaders we listen to what people are looking for and what people need. Parents, right, especially women who are trying to balance career path with being a mother, being a parent, um, being a family member, all such of different types of personal encounter. It needs to be integrated to our work.
Yeah.
Um, I think I personally don't believe in work life balance. I'm sorry to say there's no such thing, but I do believe in work life integration. I truly believe that it is possible to be done. And leaders in different industries need to really pay attention to that. That people is your most powerful investment, right? Of course, yes, revenue generation, but people is your valuable asset, and there's no other way but for an organization to be people centric. That's my last
Yeah. No, actually,
message.
thank you for sharing that. That brings me to a a bonus question for our viewers. Is that with a very interesting point on the work life integration. Then
Mm.
how do you manage, let's say, your time with your family, your children, and your loved ones, and of course the community? So what are some of the, let's say, yes and no? How do you differentiate that, so that you do not also miss out on the quality that life has to offer, both in terms of work and in terms of course, the family life?
Yeah. Well, I'm very lucky to have this remote work, right? And for Slash as an organization, for always be okay when I say, or when our team members said, like, I'm sorry, I cannot attend that meeting because I'm picking up my daughter from school, during working hours, right? I'm very lucky that I work with my colleagues and leaders in the company that is allowing us to say it out loud, and it's okay to combine it with your work schedules. But there's this strategy that I use to kind of um, log off, especially with my brain. So a certain amount of in a certain time, for example, okay, 7:30, I don't look at my phone anymore. So I'm sorry, that's got to wait. Um, for my brain to kind of um, flash all the things that is happening in the morning, in the entire day. And then the next day I also allow myself to tune back into what's left yesterday. And there's a sequence that I do to make sure that I keep a journal in and reflect in that journal. Yeah, I'm sure you're also familiar with a mindful leadership kind of style where you reflect and aware of what your surrounding. It helped me to digest the information and learn from a specific situation that really um, give a lot of stress when I'm working, um, especially because I have a toddler, a 3-year old, and it's important for me to um, when I'm interacting with her, I need to be her mother instead of thinking about work and etc. So the flushing out of the whatever happens at work and etc. before I join my family is very very important for me.
Yeah, yeah. Thank
I
you,
hope
thank
I
you.
answer your question. Sorry for
Of
the
course,
rambling.
of course, of course. See, more than questions, Maria, I'm sure I've shared this also with you, and by now I'm sure also audience also have realized that,
Hmm.
because I've been doing this. I think the experiential learning, there is no match. When you share an answer and when you share your experiential methodology of uh, you know uh, doing things or things happening your way, I think it is for me and the audience to take out and see, okay, what is in for me. And I think that is my why of having this podcast in this particular fashion. So for that, 100 on 100 to you, Maria, for actually giving out your instances from your on your day to day life, be it your work at Slash or the other foundation that you run, and of course with your family. So thank you, Maria, once again for that. And for
Thanks,
the
Sagar.
viewers, yeah, and for the viewers, thank you for again joining to this wonderful conversation, and continuing to inspire me to bring in wonderful folks like with the likes of Maria to come and share in their experience. And I promise I'll continue to do that in 2024 as well. So thank you very much on that.
Bye.